Hello, and welcome to Adam's Swing Trading Masterclass. Welcome to unit number 9, the ultimate competitive edge. Here we're going to be discussing systemization, and we're going to be tying everything together that we've pretty much learned to the best of my abilities. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have everything that you need to be able to get started and fully design your own trading system. So disclaimer, any views or opinions in this course are strictly my own. I'm not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. Tactics, strategies, philosophies, and fundamental principles presented here are mutually exclusive with material presented by the other professors. This is because my methods target different goals using different data. So, like I mentioned before, systemization is the one that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be bringing this back to the very, very top of the pyramid as far as the quality of the analysis and methodology. This is basically the big daddy of trading, essentially, and this can go for trading and investing. So I want you to have to think about how we're running this and how it can apply, or how you can apply this method to what you're doing personally, whether or not you're trying to clone what I'm doing or whether you're trying to develop your own investing strategy. Think about how we can systemize things. It should become a bit clearer as we get further on. So the learning objectives just for today, just 4 as normal: systemization review, edge layering and recommended edges, lucid chart spreadsheets and a couple of worked examples, and final considerations. So strategy, motivation, and strategy goal. Basically, I just wanted to bring it back to what I've achieved personally. This is the portfolio that I've designed, and this really is only a segment of the portfolio. Other enhancements are applied after this as well to bring these returns up slightly. So if you like the idea of having a strategy that can get you hundreds of percent on average per annum with a very low level of risk and a large level of risk adjusted returns, then this type of strategy is for you. And of course, the time input is a big factor in that. Clearly, this isn't a moon mission type of portfolio. If you're looking at a portfolio, I mean, you can make this into a bit of a moon mission portfolio depending on what rule set that you design. You can have like a leverage or no leverage portfolio where you have all the rules set up in a certain way to clear for that. But we'll cover that later. I just wanted to let you guys know basically what you're working towards, because this one, despite having all of the information here, it's going to be one of the hardest ones, one of the hardest units probably. So anyway, we'll just keep moving on and see what you guys think. So systemization review. We're just going to look at a high level of what I'm trying to achieve here with systemization itself. This should be an enjoyable example, actually, of what I'm going to be incorporating. So just quick review. Systemization is the highest form of analysis. This is where you have a manual, semi-automated, or fully automated process which incorporates multiple forms of analysis into a single system. Each form of analysis within the system would preferably be statistically verified with sufficiently back-testable history. Systemization also removes almost 100% of the human element from the process, lowering the probability that emotional flaws and cognitive biases will corrupt the outcome, which of course is one of the main issues in trading. So systemization, we're going to look at this using a casino analogy. So I want you to think about how casinos operate, right? They create a collection of edges and run them all at once to bring the cumulative probabilities of each edge closer to the present day. Hundreds of slot machines, dozens and dozens of tables, they're all running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with a slight edge towards the house. No one single machine or table has a persistent edge where every single time somebody sits down, they lose 50 cents to their house, or maybe 0.5% to their house. No, it's random. So you have to have all of these edges operating all at the same time so that the average cumulative edge is very, very close to the average edge of all of the machines. So you want them to be running as often as possible in order to bring those probabilities closer to the present day. Makes sense to me conceptually. Hopefully after I explain it a little more, it'll make sense to you as well. We know that the returns to the house from gambling are inconsistent. In, say, for example, in the very first 5 people playing when the casino opens, 1 will lose and then 3 people will win, resulting in a net loss to the house. If you closed the casino right then, after the first couple of people played, then the casino would be at a loss and you'd have a losing casino. However, we know that that's not the case. They open persistently around the clock. So if I just have the one slot machine, and I might need to wait months for the wins and losses to approach the average expected returns. If of course I'm a hustler, I'm also impatient. So have a look at this chart, for example. This is the cumulative results from dice rolls, right? If you roll the dice, the average result is 3.5. And you keep rolling, and the average returns will move around, and sometimes you'll have a return above average or below average, and it'll settle towards the average, like this. So say if you were running a casino machine and your returns were slightly above average, and your edge was slightly above average, you'd still receive this variability, and it would move around a lot before it settled slightly above the average to give you your cumulative average return. So if I have hundreds of tables and slot machines and roulette tables, however, the average return of all these edges will almost immediately converge on the expected average return. Hundreds of people playing at once keep things in a form of stable chaos. Now, what you can see here is a similar chart to the one that we had in the previous slide, and you can see that each individual trial is very random but converges on the average. But if we were to take an average of all of the different trials, an average of the cumulative averages, to be specific, we would have something like this red line here where it would be really crazy at the very beginning, and then very quickly it would settle towards the average, and then you would receive the average returns of all of the different machines and edges. Now, of course, these two examples from these different slides, they're centered around, this was a bad example, but this one was centered around 0. Obviously, in a casino, all of your edges are going to be maybe in the single figure percentage points, so slightly above average. So instead of centering around 0, they'd be at maybe like 1 or 2 or 3%. I don't know what casinos run. So yeah, that's an example of a good casino strategy, and this is an example of a bad casino strategy. A bad casino strategy is where you've got just one edge and you're running that. A good casino strategy is to have a room full of equipment so that everything's running all at the same time. This is another example of the same principle. To get technical, it's called the central limit theorem. For anybody who's a mathematician, this should immediately make sense. You can see as the n number of trials increases that you get a clustering closer towards the mean. And if your edge is 1 and 0 is break even, then you can see that over time, the more trials you run, the closer you get towards the average expected return. Not as easy to understand probably as this one here, but this is the mathematically correct way of representing the central limit theorem. Anyway, so how does this apply to our method? Clearly, we want to be like a casino, not only in the sense that we have an unfair edge, but also in the sense that we have many unfair edges running at the same time. Casinos, however, have a major problem. A single person cannot sit at 2 machines at once for maximum exploitation. A person can only be in one place at one time. Furthermore, we cannot, under normal circumstances in a casino at least, make the person play one game multiplied by the probabilities of a second game to extract even more money from them. I don't know about other countries, but in Australia, however, this is actually possible using sports betting multis, which are multi-legged bets that multiply the dealer's edges together. This is one of the most extremely exploitative things I've ever seen. It's horrifying. I can't even believe that it's legal, to be completely honest with you. From a mathematical perspective, it's just preposterous. And obviously, I want to use that to my advantage. So, unlike a casino, with investing, we can take our edges and multiply them together in a sequential manner to actually maximize the probabilities of making money, just like the multis explained in the previous slide. Therefore, if you got to choose, you would have as many edges as possible and run them all at the same time, right? Well, obviously the answer is yes. And if you took my advice from the last unit, you would have accumulated some strategies and you'll be ready to apply the learnings in this unit straight away. If you ignored my advice, you should probably do that before continuing. Seriously, you may need to consider stopping this lecture right now and just going back and developing all those different strategies that I encouraged you guys to do. We'll be revisiting this towards the end. It's not essential. However, it is a very critical part of the masterclass. Maybe just watch until the end so you can get a view of why they're essential. So, edge layering and recommended edges. This is probably the meatiest part here. So strategic edge layering considerations. When it comes to optimal edge layering, and this is very, very high level, what I'm about to kind of lay on you. Optimal edge layering, you want to have multiple edges targeting different factors. And this is kind of where diversification of inputs come from. So you'll want to have a trend-based strategy, you'll want to have a rebalancing strategy, you'll want to have a relative weighting strategy between the different trend strategies, and you may also want to have a total conviction factor as well in there. Or alternatively, you can have all of the edges targeting the same factor, for example, 10 trend following strategies, but they all get their inputs from different sources. So maybe you have 4 technically based, 3 sentiment based, and 3 on-chain based. The best possible method would be to use all of these things at once. So you have 10 trend-based factors, 10 rebalancing factors, 10 relative weighting factors, and 10 total conviction factors. That's a bit extreme, and it's impractical, let's be completely honest. You don't have to adhere to this. You can keep it as simple as you like within reason, and just maybe have 6 technical trend-following strategies, which is kind of along the lines of what you guys will be starting out with. However, increasing the complexity in the above way is the optimal method of turbocharging the risk-adjusted returns and avoiding a single strategy from blowing up your system. So we'll be also discussing that a little bit later. So trend following strategies. This is really the bread and butter of the method that you will be constructing. 80% of your returns are probably going to be generated with your trend strategies. So you'll be using the moving average crossover strategies from the previous lecture, plus all of the additional ones you created for yourself. The ones I provided for you can form a good base for your new strategies, but it's likely not going to be enough on their own. You want as many additional trend following strategies as possible. Or if you're smart enough, you may want to actually go and code your own. I'm actually working with a couple of guys in Hustlers University at the moment, some very smart students that have come forward, coders, guys that are interested in developing their strategies. So I'm working with them currently. But you don't need to be a coder to actually get all this shit going. You just need to have lots of time to do the analysis on these different strategies and brute force test the back tests. Do your best to understand the things, understand the inputs. So strategies to consider developing. You've got DMS, which is directional movement system, Arun, MACD, moving average convergent divergence, slow stochastic, and the STC, which is the SHAF trend cycle indicator. Out of all of those ones, you may want to develop all of them, one of each, which would be really cool. But Arun and the STC, those are good ones. You probably want to develop those first, in addition to the moving crossover ones, moving average crossover strategies. To get the best edge possible. That's just a hunch. They're incorporated in my trend following analysis. I haven't spent too much time on DMS and MACD, but you guys may want to look into that. I mean, they're all good, right? They're all good, and especially if you're layering them together. And that's really the thing that we're going for here, like I mentioned with the casino analogy. So moving average crossover strategies, Arun, and the STCs. You want to develop a whole bunch of different strategies for those. Again, if you like my feedback on the viability of these strategies that you've created, feel free to DM me the backtest statistics and I'll go over them with you. So with the weightings, you'll want them between the different strategies to be more aggressive and less aggressive, depending on how much alpha they have, how much drawdown they have. You want to maximize the synergy between them all. The calculations are complex. Thankfully, there are some websites which can do all of this for you with some minor data preparation without the need to know maths. I've already covered this concept briefly in other videos. If I break it down here, it'll take all day. Suffice to say, this step is just as important as the rest. I strongly recommend that you do this. So you should be going to the Portfolio Visualizer website, Optimize Portfolio. I just put these formulas on the screen to scare you guys. don't worry too much about them. Weightings continued. So regarding the data preparation process, TradingView allows the extraction of trade data shown. It will be up to you to index the returns and upload it to the Portfolio Optimizer website. Once you've created your account and uploaded the data, optimize weightings using the omega ratio set to a benchmark return of 0%. The 0% actually turns off the benchmarking system, which prioritizes the maximization of the omega ratio, which is most desirable. So you can see down here in the photo, we have the strategy. Once you've developed it, go to list of trades and then click the download button. After you've done that, you'll have to figure out how to index them yourself. I'm not going to walk you through that. It's basic maths. It should be fairly easy. You essentially get the return series, convert it into a percentage, get an index of 100, and then apply the percentage change to the 100, and then you get the index, and then you upload it to the Portfolio Visualizer website with the dates, and then everything should be good. You should be able to figure that out by yourself. If you have any problems, why not hit me up? But yeah, they've got guides on the Portfolio Visualizer website on how to do this. Super important, because you will find that when you go through this and you develop your trend following strategies, you may find one of these strategies is an absolute slapper. Like, it's got massive returns, but also the risk is super high as well. So you will want to weight less capital to that one, and you may have a strategy that fires really often and is quite conservative, doesn't have massive swings, and you'll want to apply more to that. So the weightings process will help you understand this. I would consider this a very important part of the process. Rebalancing. So rebalancing between different strategies or strategy groups, provided they are robust, will provide additional performance and lower drawdowns than buy and hold. The additional performance this method allows for makes it very useful. You'll see in the fine print that rebalancing is built into the portfolio simulation and optimization process in the previous slides. On the Portfolio Visualizer website, it actually incorporates monthly rebalancing. So I suggest monthly rebalancing. I've tried a few different ones on the website, which is the default one on that website. So you shouldn't need to worry about this too much. Just make sure you understand that the portfolio is being rebalanced, and that's something that you will need to actively do when you run this strategy. Seasonality. So this should be self-explanatory to those who have read the alt season research paper in the professor's notes section. For those who haven't, use the search function in that channel and look for alt season. Essentially, the implication is during BTC season, increase weight to BTC. During alt season, increase weighting to ETH and alts potentially. This is a very gentle push. We're kind of going down the overall chain in terms of importance. The trends and the weightings were first, then rebalancing. Now we're going into different factors, seasonality, relative strength on the ratio. So you can shift the weightings around on the basis of Bitcoin strength and weakness. So you can change size allocations depending on the statistical significance of the strategy. For example, if your strategy is very significant on the upside but not significant on the downside, let the weightings reflect that. So this should be fairly self-explanatory, which is that if you're running a strategy and your Bitcoin and Ethereum trend positions are long, and you have your relative strength on the ratio algo or strategy, and it says long, you increase your weighting to Ethereum marginally, and then when it goes short, you increase your weighting to Bitcoin marginally, and vice versa. You got to check for these statistics, like I explained in the previous lecture, how you go through and you look at the statistics of your algorithms and determine whether or not they're significant on the upside or downside. Despite having an advanced algorithm for this one, my downside alpha for the relative strength on the ratio is quite low. It's like barely above 1. So I actually don't run, actually I think it might be below 1. It might be 0.9 or something. So I only run the long only side of this, which is put extra weight on Ethereum when the ratio is rising. Macroeconomic regime. So you can shift the total conviction of your strategy on the basis of the macro regime that you're in. You can see the expected returns via macroeconomic regime. This was just an easy one to show from HedgeEye. You can create rules such as only use half-size positions in deflation, and only use leverage in Goldilocks. That those rules would be logical. It'd be a long time between some of these conditions, but that's just part of the game. This is the one from Macro 42. You can see that returns generally for Bitcoin are higher in Goldilocks, and the inflation are kind of tied, but deflation is definitely negative. Sample size is quite large, so yeah, that doesn't bode well for Bitcoin. So you need to consider whether you want to incorporate macroeconomic regime analysis into your analysis. I currently don't, but that's all right. Yeah, and you'd be using a forecasting system like this essentially to figure out where we're going and what your rules would be. As you can see, we're at the time of filming, we're currently entering deflation. So you would not be using leverage on the long side, for example, in this situation if you were using my example from before. Okay, so and then we also have Daniel's bot. So you can also find a way of incorporating this one. You can subtract and add total positioning depending on the signals. For example, if you get a dip signal, you buy 50% of all of your positions back in anticipation of a second signal. If the second signal never comes and you go long again on a trending basis, you buy the remaining 50% using the trend following strategies when they flip long. If you get a second dip signal, you're now 100% invested at the bottom. If you get a third, you're kind of fucked for a short period of time, but at least you bought very close to the bottom. You can do the reverse of all of these for the tops, sell 50% for each signal. This is the method that I use. Conviction scoring, yep. So there appears to be a bit of confusion around this sheet, so I'll try my best to clear it up a little bit some more. In my personal process, I have replaced this sheet with other services that I pay for. Okay, so I don't use this anymore, but it would still be worth you using this sheet if you're just starting out, as it gives you an appreciation of how no one indicator is the holy grail of all of the different indicators, and it's really the aggregate of all of them which gives us the signal, just like the process that we're trying to build here. An example of how you use this, if you're going to use it, would be something like when the overall score is above 1.5, you would go 100% with your full-size longs, and leverage can be enabled if the relevant conditions are met. When the overall score is, let's say, -1 or -1.5, longs can only be 50% full-sized. All shorts must be taken with 100% full size, and no leverage allowed on the longs. Ultimately, you can add whatever you like though, as long as you know that it has a significant edge. This includes on-chain factors and whatever else you like. It's kind of like baking a cake. If you really want to throw carrot in there, be my guest. I don't think it belongs sometimes, but sometimes people come up with amazing ideas, and I'm discovering new things all the time. So as far as adding additional edges, as long as they make sense, then wow, just go for it. There's a whole world of opportunity out there for you guys to create amazing systems. Okay, so Lucidchart, spreadsheets, and a couple of worked examples. So Lucidchart, this website is great for figuring out what your logical process will be during the construction of the system. Being able to move rules around and find a position for them has greatly improved my perception of how the systems work and how different edges complement each other. It also forces you to think critically about whether your plans make sense or if there are any contradictions in them. Often, there will be contradictions which you can think deeply about and then create rules for. This alleviates the need to come up with complex logic under conditions where you might be stressed or have little time to react. Let me just take a quick drink. So this is an example of what you guys can create in Lucidchart. So you can see here that there are different logical considerations, and it comes all the way in from bringing the money in from your job or wherever you're getting in your cash flows from and putting them into a process. I'll start with a disclaimer here. This is an old process that I don't use anymore, okay? I do not use this process anymore. And this was a very early example of one of the processes that I ran. So, yes, you can see here that you've got and or, long, short, above, below, different things, and you can have little notes, and you can also take money out of your cryptos, and you can also put it into a safe portfolio for safekeeping, if you generate too many profits or something like that. So this is an example of laying out your thought process and just spending a good hours, like a couple of hours, like just thinking about it. Does everything make sense logically? Are there any contradictions? Think about all the times you lost money and how painful that was, and then apply different rules to these to prevent you from losing money, and then go over them and be like, what would happen if I lost money in this scenario or this scenario? Just generally simulate as many things as possible using your good judgment, and then make it into a chart like this, because that's the first step. An alternative, if you find the flowchart process to be too hard, and just again, the name of that website is Lucid Chart for this here. I encourage you strongly to do this. If you find the flowchart process too hard, you can always make it a sequential list. It's not nearly as good. You can just have this, then this, then this, then this. It's not nearly as good, but anything is better than nothing, let's be honest. And to be 100% honest with you, this is actually the one that I use. I put macro regime in here because it's one that I'm considering on incorporating. It's like in the back of my mind. I don't think it's a significant edge, but I'm considering putting it in there. So I have all of these. I have 1 to 5 in my personal system right now, and I'm about to show you that. So once you have an idea of your logic, you're going to want to incorporate it in a practical sense with the dollar amounts. So it's all good. It's all good knowing the rules, but when it comes to actually doing the dollar amounts, you're going to need a spreadsheet for this. So let's move over to the spreadsheets. So when you guys first start out, you're going to be looking at something like this. You're going to have your ORM, which is your assets under management. This is just basically how much money do I have. Lol. How much money do I have? If you have $100 in your account and you've got 6 different edges, so you've got 6 different strategies: Bitcoin strategy 1 to 3, Ethereum strategy 1 to 3, and then you pump them through the portfolio weighting method that I mentioned, and you did all your research and you're diligent. It'll probably come out with lots of different weights like this, like 15, 15, 20, 10, 30, 10. Like, they're not going to be consistent. So what you want to do is you want to make a list of these in percentage. Make sure that they all add up to 100. I'm a bit autistic about this, so I always make sure that all the totals add up. And what you want to do is you want to make a formula in this cell, and what it is it's your how much money you have multiplied by the percentage weight. Make sure your dollar signs are in there so it doesn't move around. And yeah, when you drag it down, it will give you all of your weights, and they all add to 100, because obviously 15% of 100 is $15. And then that tells you exactly how much money you should be allocating to each of your trend strategies, depending on the tested omega weights that you did using the portfolio optimizer. What you want to do is, if your portfolio gets out of whack, you will have the current weighting in there, and you'll just input those things, and then you can have the difference column over here, which is the target weight minus the current weight, and it'll give you the difference. This difference is what you should be doing with it. You can see here that I need to add $5 to the Bitcoin number 1 strategy here to bring it in line with the target weighting. So I've also applied a conditional format to here, so it's just nice and easy to read. Sometimes you might ignore the $1 and $3 ones, and you want to target the big one, the $11 one, because obviously it's really, really far out of whack. If you're running Google Sheets, that is under the conditional formatting section here. So you want to highlight all of these cells, go conditional formatting, and then do the color gradient. This is the next level of complexity. This is actually one that I was using a couple of months ago. I've since abandoned this, but this is an example of me doing the exact same thing. Capital, ORM, assets under management, and then you've got the different strategies here. I had one for each of these: Ethereum, Bitcoin, NEM, BNB, Aave, and I had the Sortino weights managed for this one. Didn't have them as omega weights for some reason. So I pumped all those in there. You can see how weird some of the weightings are. Like the whole thing was basically an a Bitcoin strategy. Very little weighting on Ethereum. A lot in NEM and BNB. Allocations, had the signals all documented in here. That's actually something that you'll want for this over here. You'll want to be incorporating your signals so that you can easily just put your eyeballs over it and look at that. It was running just another experiment down here. Just ignore that. So, and this is basically the strategy that I use at the moment. So this may look very simple, and it's deceptively simple because a lot of the logic is actually contained within these algorithms. They are very, 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 very highly refined algorithms. So that's where most of the edge is. That's why I've been on your case so much about developing these extra strategies on TradingView, because you want to have as many as possible so that you can try and get as close as possible to what I've designed here without having an expert algorithm engineer working for you like I do. So you'll have your omega weights. My omega weights are just stored down here, 43%, 57%. Yours might come out to be 50-50 or something else because you're using a system like this, right? Yours might be very long. It might contain 6, 8, 10, 12 different strategies, and you need to keep track of all of them. Often the more the better. And the logic in mine goes like this. Yours doesn't have to be set up the same, but I'm going to explain to you the process here. So capital ORM gets pumped through the weightings, and it gets pumped out in allocation form. Now, over here, we have the enhancements section. So seasonal weighting is the first enhancement. The question is, are we in alt season or are we in BTC season? As you guys know, at the time of filming, this is February, we're in alt season. So my personal rule, whether or not this is correct or not, I could probably optimize these. If we're in alt season, I place an extra 30% long on Ethereum, and I take away 30% from Bitcoin. So I am very much overweight on Ethereum relative to the strategy optimal weightings. So you can see here that now we have 80-20, and we pump those down into the ETH BTC relative trend enhancement section. So now I have the rules here, which show me if it is long, I go positive 20%. If it's not long, 0%. This is a reflection of how I mentioned to you guys previously that the relative trend algorithm that I have is not very good on the short side, but on the long side, it is statistically significant. So I'm going to be running that. We're currently not long, so 0%. Now the weightings that were translated from up here down to here, modified using this, are now brought into the rebalancing section. So what is it? Current weights, that's an input, defined weight. So this cell here is, you'll see it's over here. It's linked from this one. And I have divergence, which is the current weight minus the defined weight. My action, so this is the signal. They're both short, actually. So just today at time of filming. And very importantly, rebalance monthly. And that is there. Alt season and relative trend, that's a little rule that I think that I'll be experimenting with, which is like I'm only allowed to take leverage during alt season and a strong relative trend. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. I'll run it into the future and see how that goes. But yeah, this is kind of how I've set everything out. If you're new to spreadsheets, sorry, but you're just going to have to get used to something like this. This is, strategies use numbers, man. Money is the language of numbers, so you're just going to have to get used to it. So yes, all the cells are linked together. They're modified using, you can see the formulas up here. They're all modified using the different weightings here. They all have a weighting modification from the enhancements that I've selected. Then it goes into here. It tells me this is just a prompt to rebalance monthly. And then I have the actions and the weighting and the current weighting, and it's all there. So, final considerations. So here's a summary. My personal system is always changing on a month-to-month basis depending on what new information I find or what type of market regime we are entering. Therefore, you're going to need to decide which edges make sense for you. At the most basic level, some people just run a shitload of trend strategies with no enhancements. This is okay. Remember that something which is basic and rules-based is superior to the most advanced discretionary system, in my personal opinion. Okay, I don't want any of you guys starting fights with Daniel or Michael in the fucking comments section. This is just my opinion, okay? So to start with, just run a system with maybe 6 to 8 different trend following methods on just Bitcoin and Ethereum. Then optimize the weightings using the portfolio optimizer. This is likely 80% of your strategy done and dusted, provided that your trend following methods, that the strategies that you've developed, are robust and that they're good, and you believe that you've taken them as far as you can possibly take them. Once you've mastered this, start thinking about how you incorporate different advanced weightings using enhancements such as seasonality and relative strengths on the ratio like I showed you. The enhancements from here are essentially infinite and are only constrained by your imagination. I guess the question is, how badly do you want it? So what can go wrong? One of the largest risks of running a trend-only system without stop losses, because the strategy is the stop loss, is that a rogue strategy can act like a black hole and destroy all of your funds over time through the rebalancing mechanism. For example, if one strategy begins to lose, then the rebalancing mechanism will start giving that losing strategy more money. Clearly, this is not optimal, and we don't want to see this happening. So this would be a slow process over the course of many weeks, in the worst case scenario, if this was ever going to happen, as alpha decay generally doesn't happen all at once. So I've never seen this happen in practice because I've always spent the time making sure that the trend following systems strategies that have been developed are robust. So you've not only got robust strategies that you've developed and you're quite happy with the logic behind them, but also you have multiple of them. So multiple trend following strategies at the same time to spread the risk, and one strategy tested a high level for quality. So reduce the risk at an individual level. Knowing this risk highlights the importance of running both safety measures if possible, multiple strategies and robust ones. But like I mentioned, if you take this seriously, the probability of going into a trend following black hole is very low. You've just got to make sure that you're putting in the effort. Final comments. So if you've made it this far, I want you to know, you, dear viewer, that I do have a lot of personal respect for you. By now, you should be of sound understanding of markets and how they are a giant killing machine designed to screw over the maximum number of people as possible. What we have done here is not delude ourselves into thinking the market is some sort of magical ATM we can just dip into and pull cash out of. We are professionals extracting statistically sound value from the market through hard work and deep research. This course does not contain everything I know. There is an almost infinite amount of complexity from this game, and my brain is kind of like an armory where you can just draw hundreds of different weapons from. Kind of like that scene in The Matrix where all the gun racks come out. There will be likely blind spots and missing information caused by my curse of knowledge. If you need clarification on something, just ask me. It is my strong belief that only those who have the capacity to ask the right questions and build this system using the pieces of information I've laid out are intelligent enough to actually run it. If you cannot build it with my help in DMs or through the chat, then honestly there's no hope for you. I encourage you to rise to the challenge because I am here to help. Obviously, this masterclass is not a "this is how I got rich, just copy what I do" course. The real world is competitive and always changing, which is a key consideration here, which is why this masterclass is an expression of that fundamental truth. Here we have learned how to think about systems, so it's more of a teach a man how to fish rather than provide him with the fish. I've given you a little bit of fish. I gave you the moving average crossover strategies, but yeah, I'm mostly teaching you how to fish really in this masterclass. With that being said, I will also be including additions to this masterclass as well. I'll likely be collecting frequently asked questions and updating them as I go along and making extra videos. So don't worry, guys. Absolutely don't worry. There'll be more content coming out. But for the moment, I believe this is a good logical place to conclude my masterclass. I don't suspect that I'll be doing unit number 10. So it'll be probably appendixes from here on out with frequently asked questions and such. So All in all, thank you for your time. Remember, this masterclass is just the beginning. To operate at the highest levels, you'll likely need to talk to me to clarify some things, which is fine. Perhaps we'll even work together. Like I've mentioned, I'm already working with a couple of students. So yeah, and that brings me a lot of joy, to be honest. So it's good. I like the intellectual challenge. Until then, if you have any questions, jump into the Crypto General chat or ask for professors and hit me with the @tag. And that is all for today. Thank you very much, guys, and good luck out there. Talk to you soon.